fourth panelist is Scott Perry, the Director of the Bureau of Oil and Gas Management for the Department of Environmental Protection here in Pennsylvania. Scott.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to come here and talk with you today about the department's role in overseeing this important industry. And we have a world-class play here in Pennsylvania. We have world-class well drillers, but this is my home, and we need to have world-class operations. When I talk to a lot of folks, there are many who don't feel that the department is adequately positioned to properly manage the industry. They believe that there's a lack of regulation, or that Marcellus is simply too innovative for us to properly manage. I hope to dispel some of those misperceptions here today. If you heard, Pennsylvania is the birthplace of the oil and gas industry. Since the first commercial oil well was drilled here in 1859, we think we've had over 350,000 wells drilled in Pennsylvania. Right now, we have 125,000 active sites. All of those wells exhibit similar characteristics to the Marcellus. I hear a lot of folks say, well, the Marcellus is just so unique. It's the deepest well we have in Pennsylvania. Well, that's actually not true. We've got about 17,000 deeper wells than the Marcellus are permitted today. So, it's the horizontal drilling that's made Marcellus so unique. That's what's really key. But we had coal bed methane wells that all use horizontal well bore drilling for years before the Marcellus came. Well, it's the hydraulic fracturing. That is really what makes a Marcellus well unique. Well, actually, fracturing has been around since about 1948. And in Pennsylvania, it's been standard practice since the 80s. Virtually every well drilled today is hydraulically fractured using the same kinds of chemicals and processes used in the Marcellus. All right, well, what is it that makes the Marcellus so unique? Well, really, it's the size. That is a picture of basically a mobile industrial facility. The size of the sites are bigger, the size of the equipment's bigger, the amount of water used is bigger, so there can increase the potential for environmental impacts. And I just want to spend some quick minutes here talking about how we comprehensively regulate this industry. We actually have 3 different statutes that are devoted to well permitting itself. The primary vehicle is the Oil and Gas Act, but the Coal and Gas Resource Coordination Act deals with wells drilled through coal seams. We have thousands of those in the southwestern part of the state. And then the Oil and Gas Conservation Law. It's an entire statute devoted to our deeper wells deeper than the Marcellus. This is actually the pooling statute in Pennsylvania. It's been around since 1961. When you're going to build a site, you're going to have to move a lot of earth. Sediment is the number 1 contributor to stream impairment in Pennsylvania. Therefore, we take it very seriously. In Pennsylvania, if you're going to build a site, you always need to employ best management practices like fabric socks and silt fences to keep deep dirt from getting in streams. If the site's going to be larger than 5 acres, then you're going to need a permit from us before you're authorized to build that site. After the site's built, you're going to need to get water to fracture the well. And depending on the length of the lateral, I've seen wells requiring over 9 million gallons of water that needed to frack those wells. We're concerned about that. We evaluate water withdrawals from our streams comprehensively, looking upstream and down to ensure that the water withdrawn from our rivers and lakes isn't at a rate that impairs water quality. Water quality and water quantity are completely linked, and we have an obligation to make sure that those existing and designated uses of our streams are maintained and protected. One of the other things we're seeing now is a use of degraded sources of water like acid mine drainage and treated effluent. I'm excited to see that. After you've withdrawn that water, you need a place to put it. We have centralized impoundments in this state that can store up to 16 million gallons of flowback. That's a significant volume of water. And we have a significant program for that. Basically, they're designed as if they're putting it into a landfill. Two layers, synthetic layers of geotextile material with a leak detection zone in between, groundwater monitoring wells upgraded and down. After the flowback period, you're going to need to manage it properly. And we want to know everything about it. We want to know how much is generated. We want to know the chemical characteristics of it. We want to know who hauled it and where it went. We collect records on all of that information for every load. The disposal is a key issue. Pennsylvania does not have a significant resource for deep well injection as do other states. Therefore, we need to develop new rules quickly to address the extremely high salt contents and other contaminants in this flowback water. The flowback can be 10 times saltier than the ocean. And we developed new rules this past year to address that issue head on. Now, new and expanding facilities that take the wastewater have to discharge it at drinking water standards. We're basically distilling this water so it can never impact our streams. We just also recently finalized new well construction regulations on February 5th. There's a comprehensive overhaul of our existing regulations to address the very serious issue of gas migration. We address new casing standards, new cementing standards and cement practices, blow-up preventer enhancement requirements, and also have some new well reporting requirements as well. And lastly, we're doing a comprehensive evaluation on the potential air quality impacts associated with this industry. We've already done a couple of studies in the Pittsburgh area, Susquehanna, and Bradford counties. What our studies have found is that there's no acute risk to public health as a result of the air emissions associated with this industry. We didn't identify contaminants of concern basically at any of the sites we evaluated. That doesn't mean we're done. We need to continue to evaluate the potential air quality impacts, and that's what we're going to do. We're evaluating our permitting programs, and in addition, evaluating further studies associated with air quality. I know a lot of you have many questions that I won't be able to answer tonight. That's my contact information. If you have a moment, write it down, and I'll be happy to talk with you on the phone or answer your emails. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. We're 4 for 4, so the challenge continues. Our fifth panelist is David Yoxheimer, the Extension Associate from the Penn State Marcellus Center for Outreach and Research. David?
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Thanks for having me here. Dr. Battista, I would like to thank you for a fantastic job. My co-panelists, and I'd especially like to thank everybody who came out here tonight to learn a little bit more about Marcellus Shale here in Pennsylvania. I'm just going to give you a quick Marcellus 101. It might reinforce a couple of things you heard on a couple of the last presentations. As you heard, the Marcellus natural gas deposit is North America's largest natural gas reservoir, containing over nearly 500 trillion cubic feet of recoverable natural gas. The Marcellus itself covers approximately 6 states, encompassing 95,000 square miles. It occurs at depths of up to 9,000 feet and comes up to the ground surface to the north in New York and to the west in Ohio. The thickness of the gas-bearing portion of the Marcellus may be upwards of 250 to perhaps even 300 feet thick. And this volume of gas is sufficient to satisfy the U.S. demand at our current burn rate for approximately 20 to perhaps even 25 years. One of the environmental upsides of utilizing natural gas is that it's 50% cleaner than coal and approximately 30% cleaner than oil. This map shows the extent of the Marcellus across Pennsylvania and the adjoining states. And if you follow the red arrow there, it shows that the depth of the Marcellus here in Clarion County is approximately 5,000 to 6,000 feet. And the thickness of the shale here is approximately 100 feet, plus or minus 25 or so feet. So it'll vary across the region. Also in this area, you may be getting into the portion of the Marcellus that actually contains some of the natural gas liquids, such as propane and butane, pentane and ethane. And those natural gas liquids can actually be refined off and sold on their own markets. And so that actually adds some additional revenue and value to the natural gas. But again, the dark blue colors there represent the deepest parts of the shale along the Allegheny front in the 8,000 to 9,000 foot range, and it shallows to the northwest and comes up to the ground surface again in New York. This is a cross section that helps you visualize what the Marcellus might look like in the subsurface. And again, as you can see in the central part of the state, it's at its greatest depth and shallows to the north and to the west. This map's going to go through a time series of where the wells have been drilled here in Pennsylvania. Currently we have a little more than 2,800 wells that have been drilled to date in the last 5 or 6 years. And as you can see, you have a concentration of wells up in the northern tier counties, such as Tioga, Bradford, Susquehanna counties, and down in the southwest part of the state, where again you have the natural gas liquids, so that it makes the drilling there a bit more exciting, a bit more potentially economical. In the central part of the state, you notice that the drilling locations are a bit more fragmented, and part of that has to do with the the lack of infrastructure and pipelines in that part of the world. But it's very prospective in that part of the state. It's just the infrastructure needs to catch up with the ability to extract natural gas. This is a cutaway of what a typical horizontal well might look like in the Marcellus. So the well will be drilled vertically, approximately 1,000 feet above the shale layer, and then turned over the course of 500 to 1,000 feet. So the lateral horizontal section of the well lands into the shale at the right angle. And as Scott had said, Pennsylvania has recently passed new well construction regulations so that the methane that may be encountered during the drilling process stays in the formation until it's ready to come out of the well. And so that may take several strings of steel pipe or casing that are cemented in place in the upper several thousand feet of the earth so as to prevent the migration of methane into near-surface aquifers or surface waters. This gives a conceptual idea of what the horizontal section of the well would look like. So on the left, what you have is a horizontal section of the well that's drilled into the shale. There are naturally occurring, mostly vertical fractures in the shale, and those provide the primary means through which the methane would flow out of the shale into the well. As you saw in the video at the beginning of our show here tonight, the casing is actually perforated, and those perforations act as the portals from the well into the shale, and that's the perforations are through which the fluids are injected into the shale, and through which then the methane would flow back into the well. So on the right would show what the shale might look like after it's been fractured. The fractures are propped open with high pressure water, and then sand proppants are injected out into the shale to keep those fractures open so that the methane can actually flow out of the shale into the well. As you heard, the average well might require on the order of 3 to 4 million gallons of water, sand, and fluids injected into the shale. It might be on the order of 3 million gallons on the lower end and maybe upwards of 9 million gallons on the high end. So that was your quick Marcellus 101, and I'm going to pass the torch to my next panelist. Thank you very much.
David finished ahead of time on that one. Our sixth panelist is Mike Love, the Vice President of Government Relations for UGI. Michael.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. I appreciate it, and thank you, Dr. Battista and Clarion University for once again establishing that Clarion University is where the key legal issues of the Commonwealth are decided. I'm going to approach this topic a little bit differently. I think the answer to the question of whether this is a boom or bust has already been decided. It is a boom. And I think I can show you economically how it has already changed your lives. And I'm going to build up a little bit more on what Vice Chairman was saying about the effects that have already been impacted on each and every one of your lives. The PUC started looking at electric rates after the rate caps in June of 2008. And at that point in time, the projection for the companies that were coming off of rate caps were that residential rates were going to go up 73%, that those of you that run stores, restaurants, hospitals, etc., you would see 92%, and the industrials would see on average 102%. Even worse, that the numbers were much worse for the companies in this area. Now, there were many reasons why that ultimately came down to a low double-digit or a single-digit increase. PUC took some steps, those companies took some steps. But the overwhelming reason was the price of natural gas went down because of Marcellus Shale and each of the other shale plays throughout the United States. Now, we all know we're in a bad economic time, but literally, think about each of you, what you would be in if you were paying 72% more than you're paying now in your electric bill. If where you were going to the restaurants and etc. was paying 92% more, for the major industrials in this part of the state were paying 107%. Do you think anybody would have been hiring? Do you think you would have had the disposable income that you have now? So that aspect alone is a big difference. UGI, for whom I work, is the largest gas distribution company in the state, and we have a small electric company. I can tell you that our gas customers paid $500 less over this past winter than they paid 5 years ago. Again, the reason that's true is because of the availability of the gas supply from Marcellus and other shale plays. And I'm going to say that it is a pleasure to be able to charge our ratepayers less than what we did 5 years ago. And I would simply suggest that there is not another energy provider that could make that statement in terms of, certainly wouldn't say it with fuel oil as we start heading towards $5 a gallon heating oil. You certainly wouldn't say it with electric. You wouldn't say it with gasoline. You wouldn't say it with kerosene. But you can say it with natural gas. One of the aspects that I think many people don't realize is we at UGI and other companies in the state are very much involved in renewable energy. And we have a state that's very encouraging of renewable energy. But renewable energy doesn't go anywhere without natural gas to support it. Because renewable energy does not go around like nuclear and coal 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It has limitations. What the power pools need is natural gas to support them. I know that because for our size, we have more solar capacity in this state than the other electric utilities. We have more alternative energy projects underway proportionally than the others. And we would not be doing it, would not even be considering it, if it wasn't for Marcellus gas being there to back up renewable energy and diversify our energy supply. Another thing that UGI has done over the years has been having coal generation. But as Mr. Spigelmyer so aptly put it, coal has some very negative attributes for it. So this year, we have converted our coal-fired units over to natural gas. Again, saving the environment a lot, saving our ratepayers more. I again illustrate to you that with the new environmental protection rules coming out of Washington, that there will be many other coal plants in the state converting over to natural gas. Why? Because the Marcellus supply gives us an economic choice to convert over from coal. Now, I do want to stress to you that there are many issues here that we could talk about. Let me give you another example. Because we've been able to reduce the price of natural gas, there have been more recipients of LIHEAP, which is low-income heating assistance, than there has been before. Why? Because the price of gas is lower, so less dollars have to go to those that have natural gas, leaving more dollars for other people. That's a big issue, especially if you're poor. Let me also say that one of the aspects that I think we sometimes forget is giving into the community. And if you look at what the Marcellus folks are doing, they're exceeding my expectations of what other businesses do. And UGI is there as well. One of the things I'm most proud about is that we've been involved in the Reading is Fundamental program for the last 20 years. We've given away 1 million books to first graders and second graders. And we've helped over 300,000 children. Why? Because 36% of our kids by 4th grade can't be up at the basic level. I mention this because back in the bookcases, I brought books tonight. If you know a first grader, second grader, preschool, please take one. Reading to your kids is that important.
Thank you, Mike. And as we move to the last of our panelist presentations, I would questions answered by the panelists, we'll be moving into that segment. Last but not least, our final presenter is a former colleague of mine who is a Bradford County Commissioner. It's my pleasure to present Doug McClinko of Bradford County Commission. Doug.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Dr. Battista has done an outstanding job. To put everything that's happening in the county that I love and serve, Bradford County, in 7 minutes is impossible. The speed at which the activity has taken place in our county, the statistics are also impossible to report. Bradford County, by the numbers, we have 35 rigs drilling in Bradford County, 848 wells permitted in 2010, 1,518 to date, 1,442 active permits, 355 Marcellus Shale wells drilled in 2010, 533 total wells drilled between 2002 and 2010. We have 30 water withdrawals, 76 water impoundments. The picture on the screen is a picture of a fresh water impoundment of about 10 million gallons. Bradford County is a closed loop system. All of our operators operate in closed loop, which means no drilling fluids are stored in open pit, which I think is a wonderful thing. Bradford County today, we try to balance development and stewardship. As the last Secretary of DEP said, we're off the charts on strengthening our regulations. We're seeing in Bradford County. Susquehanna River Basin Commission is the river that goes through my county, and they serve the Susquehanna River watershed. I think they're doing a wonderful job. On the picture on the screen, you can see a picture of a water withdrawal. In my opinion, we've had no trouble with the impoundments or the withdrawals, but they're clean, environmentally safe, and they're very well regulated by Susquehanna River Basin Commission. We have 243 miles of temporary surface water lines. More to come. Cuts down on truck traffic, which is a major problem in Bradford County. We have 97 miles of interstate lines. It's going to sound like an auctioneer, so we'll have to go pretty fast. We have 377 miles of gathering lines, and this is only the beginning. We have a before and after in a township near mine where I live, is Island. Gives you an idea of what it looks like before and after. We've commissioners have traveled to Wise County, Texas. I personally have been there once on production, once on the economic impact. To Barnett Shale, there's a lot of differences between here and Texas. The access to minerals, people in Bradford County own their mineral rights, and the surface rights different there. Climate and topography are completely different. We have a high rural population in Bradford County. Fragmentation is different than a lot of other places. We have smaller parcels. We have 51 municipalities to work with. And the township supervisors are then here. You guys are at the front lines. Our township supervisors are doing a great job. Dependency on groundwater, I'll get to that in a minute, is we're very heavily dependent on it, both private and public. We also, in northeastern Pennsylvania, have had a lack of the natural gas industry. We as commissioners, myself personally, I travel, I go to every meeting, and I get the facts. And facts are most important in this industry. We also have abundant water supply. Bradford County has accounted for 25% of all of Marcellus Shale wells that have been drilled. We're pretty busy. This gives you an indication of the different wells that have been drilled so far in 2011. Bradford and Tioga County leading the state, 75 in Bradford, 61 in Tioga, 56 in all other counties. As you can see, it's been pretty busy. This gives you an idea of our county. It's 65,000, the second largest geographical size in the state. We border New York State. It shows you there's a lot of activity with things that are going on there. Economic growth, payment to landowners through royalties and through lease payments has been incredible. I mean, it's been game changers on farms and family businesses. You know, our businesses have never seen such opportunity and growth. Community giving from the energy companies has been through the roof. We've seen a lot of charitable organizations actually be able to carry forward serving seniors. Big Brother, Big Sister have been recipients. They have stepped up to the plate. Bradford County, on the unemployment, you know, we're the leader in the state last year in job growth. And one of the things that is just real simple. If you want to go to work, you can find a job in Bradford County. The slides at the bottom, you can see our Main Street, one of our local vendors, Wilcox Jewelers, has gone on. They've gone on being creative in what they do. Chesapeake, that Dave works for, they took an old, abandoned department store and it's turned into a really good office facility. Metadine, we're seeing a lot of our local industry. We're blessed with a lot of industry in Bradford County, but they're finding a way to work with the gas industry. A little bit about community environment, commercial residential property man. demand. There can be a housing shortage at times up there. We have seen tenant or landlords raise rent up. But on the same hand, we've got a lot of great people in Bradford County. We have a lot of great landlords. And housing has been a problem with rentals. But as we become Pennsylvania employed, that will change. Groundwater, real simple. Groundwater, our wells, we depend on heavily in Bradford County. They are precious. We have a migrating methane problem. It's low, little pockets that are unrecoverable, that migrate for whatever reason. But any landowner that has their well affected is unacceptable to leave it that way. You know, we demand that the industry not only take control, take responsibility, fix it at no cost ever to the landowner. It's not a widespread problem, but it doesn't minimize the problems that we've had where we do have them. I know the other side would like to think that all water wells are affected. That isn't true, but the ones that are affected, no excuse not to take responsibility. Local taxes and fees, the growth in our county is incredible. You know, we're seeing hotels being built that pay property taxes. We're seeing vacant buildings being rented, vacant pieces of land being rented. The economic impacts are incredible. Lieutenant Governor talked about the different fees and taxes at the state level, very incredible. One of the things that myself personally, liquid fuels tax, one of the highest nations to tax our diesel fuel. 1,200 trucks to build, frack, and drill the first well. A lot of money being generated for our state, for all of our state. In conclusion, real quickly, I'd like to talk a little bit about the traffic. We do have traffic problems. We do have we've had increased accidents through the growth. The roads, back to the traffic. Our first responders, as this comes through the state, we have to, our volunteer first responders, we have to pay attention to them. They're incredible people. But in Bradford County, we're going through a learning experience. Their workload has been very much increased. DEP, SRBC regulations are working. Folks, we can protect the environment and create jobs and grow our county. We can find a balance. Real quickly, and the last thing, a lot of our problems will be solved as Pennsylvania becomes 100% employed in this. And there's two, I'd like to take just a second to talk about two companies. One is TAW, they're an Arkansas-based company that came to my township. Through the last year, they now employ 160 people with benefits. They're 100% Pennsylvania employed. On the other hand, Geo Hallbaker is a Pennsylvania-based. They've invested a lot in our county. They've hired people, good paying jobs with benefits. That's going to be the trick. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner, and I want to thank all the panelists for staying on time so that we can move now to the next phase of our program that will be moderated by the two individuals that I introduced at the beginning of our program, Judge Renee Cohn, Jubelirer, and Dr. Maria Battista. They will be asking each of the panelists some very important questions which I'm sure are on the minds of many of you. As the moderators are asking questions, I want to again remind you that we're going to have an opportunity to have your own questions answered. We're going to continue to collect those written questions. So if you could formulate your questions now that you've heard the panel presentations, we will go around and collect the cards, and they will be given to the moderators during the question and answer dialogue that we will be conducting today. And so, ladies, are you ready to begin the question and answer portion of our panel?
Yes, we are.
Very well. The podium is yours.
Thank you. The first question that I'm going to ask is going to be addressed to Commissioner Christie. Should the state develop a comprehensive energy policy for the Marcellus Shale resource?
Absolutely. Is that on? Yeah, absolutely, yes. As I mentioned in my presentation, I think it's great we're getting a lot of economic development by drilling wells and placing the gas on the interstate pipelines. But I think we can do better with those BTUs in the state. There's an enormous opportunity to take this gas and use it as a substitute for natural gas in your vehicle. We import about $1 trillion a year worth of crude oil from places that aren't too friendly to us. And you can produce gas for about $2 a gallon. So there's an enormous economic development opportunity for the state as well as the country, and at the same time we can create a lot of jobs with the infrastructure that would be necessary from the production of the natural gas. So we really need to be thinking about this in Harrisburg, about what kind of policies that we could adopt that might allow us to get a bigger bang for the buck from those BTUs coming out of the ground.
Thank you.
First, I want to also thank Dr. Battista for asking me to participate in this legal symposium, and also Clarion University and its wonderful students who are working so hard, as well as the sponsors for making this educational program possible. As you can see by the standing room only crowd that we have here, there are many issues involved and many questions that need to be asked and answered. I think the panelists have done a wonderful job this evening in the short time period that they had in describing some of the challenges as well as the benefits of Marcellus Shale. Hopefully this program will give you, the public, an opportunity to ask questions about issues that are of concern to you and to become more informed about this topic, which is so important to the people of the Commonwealth. And I already have a stack of questions here, so I'm going to sort of jump right into some of them. And the first one, and I've seen a couple of these, are interested in addressing the radiation issue. So, Mr. Perry, I'm going to ask you, if you could please, to discuss how the department is addressing the radiation issues raised by the New York Times and the radioactive program.
Sure. Naturally occurring radioactive material has been known for decades. It's associated with wastewater this industry, and the department's evaluated it in the past. One of the things that we're doing now, though, to be fair to the Times, does raise a valid point. We directed the drinking water systems that are downstream from treatment plants that take this wastewater to evaluate their finished water for naturally occurring radioactive material, the radium-226 and 228. We're also looking at the treatment plants that accept this wastewater to have them evaluate the discharge. The last data we had on it showed that discharges from these facilities were discharging actually below drinking water standards. So while we haven't looked at it recently, we're going to take a closer look to it. But this was really not a new issue that caught the department by surprise. It was one that we addressed in the past. But it's a fair question to ask that we take a look at it again.
And just a quick follow-up to that, when you talked about the treatment plants, apparently there's Ridgeway treatment plant is 40 miles upstream, and would that be one of the treatment plants that the department would be reviewing the effluent?
Yeah, we think it's appropriate for all of the sewage treatment plants and industrial waste treatment plants to evaluate their effluent for this material.
This next question is going to David Yoxheimer. There are some case samples that are out in the hallway that were brought by Chesapeake Energy, and my question deals with the casing issue from your presentation. You had talked about the casing that's being used that you perforated in order to inject the fluids in the sand in order to frack. Can you explain what impact the chemicals that's going through has on the surrounding area, as well as how do you protect, once you perforate the casing, that something else isn't going to leak out of the fact?
Right. Yeah, the perforations that are installed in the production string of casing, and that's the string of casing that's installed in the shale itself, meets what they call American Petroleum Institute standards. They use a standardized casing that's designed to withstand the kind of pressure and perhaps even corrosive atmosphere that would be in down there. That casing is cemented in place so that it's cemented up far enough so that there would be no leakage around that casing. So then once you look at the fluids that are injected into the formation, about 95% water, 4.5% sand, and about 1% of chemical additives such as friction reducers, surfactants, hydrochloric acid, and biocides to optimize the process. those fluids are injected out into the shale to again open up the fractures to release the gas from the shale. About 8 to perhaps 15% of those fluids will return to the surface as flowback water. The remaining 85% or more of those fluids remain down in the fractures and pores of the shale and are basically bound to the shale by capillary forces. So in essence, the shale acts as a sponge. It absorbs the fluids, and they release slowly along with the gas as it's produced. Those would be the tanks you often see at a well site would capture those additional fluids, but they come out of a relatively low volume, and that produced water would then be taken to a treatment facility.
Thank you.
Commissioner Christie, should the Public Utility Commission grant public utility status to gas gathering lines and transmission lines, which would give companies the opportunity to exercise eminent domain?
First off, there's an important distinction. If the pipelines are interstate pipelines, those are regulated and approved by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and we have little input into the say on whether those lines are approved and by approval given the ability to exercise eminent domain. If they're intrastate pipelines, if it's a non-utility intrastate pipeline, a lot of the gathering systems are non-utility pipelines. Right now, this commission does not have jurisdiction over those lines. We do have a case pending, and I can't talk too much about it. It's a laser pipeline that is seeking to be regulated as a public utility for these gathering lines. And the record is still open in that case, and all I can say at this point is please stay tuned. I think the commission will be acting on that matter here in the next couple of weeks. And it's been an extensive record, and it's a very complicated issue, and raises a lot of interesting issues.
Water is probably the biggest issue and concern for communities. Kathryn Klaber, as the President and Executive Director of the Marcellus Shale Coalition, can you explain in a little bit more detail than what we heard from the presentations about the closed loop system as compared to frack water and other water that's contaminated going to a treatment facility?
Again, a very complex but a very exciting area of innovation in this part of the country. You heard the description that David gave of the hydraulic fracturing process, and he talked about that 5 to 15%, 8 to 15% of the water that does return to the surface after that is complete. That water is can be treated, can be used in a lot of different ways. Where the industry here has had some major breakthroughs is being able to recycle higher and higher percentages of that water over time. In the last 18 months, some companies have gotten where 100% of that flowback water has been recycled. Others are getting very close to that goal and certainly aiming for it. So what that means is that water that comes back is then used in the next well to hydraulically fracture that well. It reduces the needs for disposal options. It reduces the amount of new water that's required. And most importantly for the companies, it also reduces the cost. So it tends to be a win-win-win. Those kind of water treatment innovations are the ones that are attracting a lot of economic and a lot of engineering attention to what we're doing right now.
Thank you.
This is a question for Mr. Spigelmyer. You mentioned mercury in your presentation. Is that one of the components of the fracking chemical mixture?
Plain and simple, no, it's not. Our frac chemicals are fully disclosed. The Department of Environmental Protection requires full disclosure of the chemicals used on site. Every location has what they call material safety data sheets that are provided on site. So every chemical is provided on site as well as in the completion report on the well. The chemicals used in the fracturing process are provided in the Department of Environmental Protection, and mercury is not a part of it.
This question is directed to Mike Love. This is from one of the members in the audience. how will we need to modify our existing pipeline infrastructure in order to accommodate the tremendous production potential of the Marcellus wells? Please comment on existing capabilities, suggested modifications to the existing infrastructure.
Excellent question. Obviously, to properly transport this much natural gas, we're going to have to significantly add to both our transmission and distribution systems. There are parts of this state that right now does not have the option of receiving natural gas. It is my opinion that will quickly change as we develop more and more natural gas. My company, for example, is considering a couple 100-mile gathering line, possibly interstate pipeline, to pick up this natural gas. We already have plans to introduce Marcellus shale gas into our natural gas distribution systems sometime later this year. So the answer to the question is there's going to be significant capital investment on both transmission and distribution systems.
Dr. Battista, one other thing to remember is that Pennsylvania serves as a primary staging area for natural gas supply throughout the country. You don't need to look very far from Clarion to see historic natural gas storage formations. North of Vernova, there's 159 billion cubic feet of natural gas kept in underground depleted production reservoirs that are basically kept there during the winter months and cycled to consumers during the, kept there in the summer months and distributed to consumers during the winter months. Those staging facilities are going to be absolutely critical as well to continue to use stored natural gas storage. As Mr. Love shared with you, there are going to have to be additional interstate transmission capability built, and the most important thing that we need to do in the short term is developing the gathering pipelines necessary to be able to collect gas from the primary Marcellus operations in the Commonwealth to the interstate transmission pipelines that deliver gas to our city centers and our utilities to deliver gas to consumers.
I'm not sure who this next question is for, so whoever wants to ask it, but this is from a student who took a class on the introduction to Marcellus Shale, and the course instructor stated that there has never been an instance of contamination from the actual fracking process, but from incomplete construction or cementation at the site, as well as negligence in brine disposal. Please verify that the process in itself is environmentally sound and that any pollution issues arise from negligence that can be prevented.
Well, I can handle that. We have never seen a water supply be contaminated directly from hydraulic fracturing. It's my opinion, though, that waste management at the surface is the #1 issue associated with hydraulic fracturing. Tanks can leak, pits can leak, there can be spills at the site. That can't happen. But with respect to fracking, the Oil and Gas Act and the Clean Streams Law are clear. You cannot pollute fresh groundwater from oil and gas well development. If folks were using nothing but distilled water and sand, I would still have an objection if there was a communication to fresh groundwater. That flowback water becomes contaminated because of the constituents of the formation. So regardless of what they used to frack the well, it absolutely cannot impact fresh groundwater. And despite the tens of thousands of wells that have been drilled in just the past 2 decades using the same kinds of hydraulic fracturing processes using the Marcellus, we've just never seen it happen.
Thank you. This is directed to Dr. Pinko, the Bradford County Commissioner, and this is from one of the community members. As a resident that lives on a dirt road, he would like to know what provisions are in place today to reduce dust and sediment due to the heavy traffic.
Well, roads in Bradford County has most dirt roads in the state of Pennsylvania. I think we have about 1,100 miles. And we have seen, just to kind of address the whole road thing, last year we had a quick spring thaw with a lot of rain. We had roads destroyed out. That was the bad news. The good news was the energy companies brought in, they didn't spare any contractor. They didn't put out for bids. They just brought every contractor that they could find in. They got our roads up to snuff. They put about $200 million, I think, in Bradford County roads in less than a year. About $75 million on township and 125 in the state, I think, and that's pretty close. So they take care of the roads. Our township supervisors have entered into road agreements with them, which have worked out really well. When it comes to the dust, that's a learning process that we're going to have to do because there is a lot of truck activity and traffic. So to date, I think they try to do the best they can, but they certainly try. And my constituents call me, I call them. They go out and they water them, they clean them, so it has been pretty responsive over the last year.
Okay, as a quick follow-up, I had the opportunity to come to your county, and some people were explaining the difference of what a township gets with money to actually fix their roads versus the money that's invested in that same township with the companies that are coming in to actually replace the roads into a different condition, a much better condition. What would be an estimated budget of a township for roads versus what's being put in by an industry for a township?
Township supervisors in rural counties are magicians. They operate budgets with very little money.
Give me an estimate.
A couple $100,000. When I was a township supervisor, our whole township operated on about $300,000 a year. But I will tell you this much: townships, regardless of what their budgets are, do not have the monies to put into their roads that they're seeing now.